Well, this morning I was out for a walk in the typical West Coast drizzling rain of the spring, and I was thinking about just aspects of my recovery. It's been probably 8 years in terms of this sense of experiencing greater freedom from habitual porn use, really that I ever thought possible for my life. And just thinking over that, and I had this thought that at this stage in my recovery, part of the biggest challenge that I have to deal with is the idea of drift. D-R-I-F-T, recovery drift. And I want to talk about that topic because I think it's a key issue for any of you who've been at recovery for any period of time. So welcome aboard.
Ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, as we're introducing the idea about long-term recovery, I want to spend a little bit of time and give some different aspects of why I think the idea of drift is such a challenge that any of you who've been at recovery for any period of time need to understand and need to deal with. And let me start by using an automobile example. And in this example, you have a vehicle and it has a steering alignment problem. In other words, if you take your hands off the steering wheel now, none of these examples are about self-driving Teslas or whatever. So just, clean your mind of any self-driving example, pre-self-driving. Okay, so work with me here. So you have a vehicle and it has a steering alignment problem. And what happens is you are driving along, and if that's the case and you take your hands off the steering wheel, then your car begins to drift to the right, which of course would take you into the ditch, or to the left, which would take you into oncoming traffic. And the idea that a car with bad alignment tends to pull left or pull right is something that most of us, I think, even if your cars have different tire pressures, I think can have the same effect. But I'm not a mechanic, but I work with me here. So you get the idea: steering alignment, drift, pull right, or pull left. And it kind of fits with this idea, and it's a phrase that I've used a number of times about longer term recovery. Doesn't matter how far down the road you get, the ditch is still the same distance away from your vehicle. It's not inevitable that you'll end up in the ditch, but it's always possible. And it's especially possible if you realize that the vehicle of your life and your history and your story has an alignment problem. Now, even if you've experienced years of sobriety, and most of the people I work with have not, but most of us would recognize, and one of the things we do in our groups is we take time and everybody gets to share like a 10-minute version of their story. And as people share their stories, what we realize is they have grown up with alignment problems. They have grown up. There's something in their life, some hurt, some trauma, some abuse, some neglect. There's something that made them a ripe target for, this idea of embedded porn use. It was a solution. It's like they were walking Velcro. And I think there's two parts. There's the hooks and then there's the fuzzy part. I'm not sure which porn is. Let's call it the fuzzy part. And now you have these hooks. But the bottom line is you grew up and you have this sort of of embedded porn use. Now, even if you have experienced and come through some real breakthroughs, most of us, if we're honest, would say, you know what? I still have a pull. I still have a steering alignment problem. Now, some of the more theologically astute people out there might describe that in language of, I still have my flesh. Good New Testament language. But you get the idea. The idea is that there still is a pull. It's why I'm always resistant to somebody that says, well, I just need to learn to hate porn. Well, that's never happened for me. You know, it will always have an attraction. I will always have some degree of a pull towards it. You can't put a beautiful young naked person in front of me and say, do you hate that? Of course I don't. There's something in me that's pulled towards that. So the idea is we have a steering alignment problem. That can very easily, if we take our hands off the steering wheel, lead us into the ditch or into oncoming traffic. Now, here's another, let's just play out this highway example a little bit more, this alignment problem. Some people think, well, you know what? I've got a good track record. And let's say you're, I don't know, driving through Arizona or through a desert. And you look ahead and that road looks completely straight. And in this example, you go clear sailing, straight road. I can take my hands off the steering wheel. Well, here's where I think we're going with this. Even if the road ahead looks completely straight, doing nothing, taking your hands off the steering wheel, will eventually lead you off even what looks to be a straight road. That's why even when you're driving on a straight road, you make all sorts of little, corrections as maybe, the road and the curvature of the road or little ups and downs pushes you one way or the other, or the wind, any sort of thing, right? You're always making little minor corrections. Again, no self-driving examples here. So where am I going with this? The bottom line is all of us who have any history with embedded porn use will experience a pull, will experience a drift. And that is a threat to long-term recovery. Let me give a different example. Let me switch to an example from weight loss. And it's pretty common. A significant proportion of guys that I work with also struggle with their weight. So weight issues and porn issues, often guys will struggle with maybe 2 or 3 things. And one of those things could be a struggle with their weight. But let's say you decide, you know what, for me to be healthy or me to be able to have the lifestyle I want, I need to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds. Let's just say as an example. And you get that. And so what happens is, in order to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds, you have to take a pretty strong, significant, it might even feel a little bit drastic. You may need to make real changes to your lifestyle. What you eat, how much you eat, your eating habits, how often you eat. It could mean the idea around exercise and getting more mobile. There's a whole lot of real significant changes you're going to need to make if you're going to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds. Just doing what you've always done is not going to get you there. But let's say you do that. Let's say you enter into that regimen, that real significant and real focused effort to lose that weight. So now you're down 40 pounds, let's say. So what happens now when you take your hands off the steering wheel? You get where I'm going here? Well, what happens is your body remembers that old weight. And if you just kind of go back to go, okay, I've lost the pounds that I want to lose, you will slowly but surely, or not so slowly, but definitely surely, don't call me Shirley, but you know the idea is you will end up putting that weight back on. Your body remembers. Your body keeps the score. And you say, well, what's missing there? Well, what happened was there was a failure of maintenance. There was a drift back to the old patterns and the old weight. Drift is not your friend. Your steering alignment is off. And here's what, let me take that example and apply it to guys' recovery from porn use. And I see this really often. Guys will have a crisis, whether it's a relational crisis or they'll just get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they will realize, kind of like I need to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds, they will go, I need to get this porn use, this problematic porn use out of my life. This is not serving me. This is ruining my life. It's ruining my relationships. There has got to be a change. So what happens? Well, not everybody, but the really smart guys get into a focused weight loss, porn loss program, right? And they get into it, and it's really regular, probably weekly with like our groups or other groups, is not only they're in weekly groups, but they're checking in with guys throughout the week. There's this whole regimen they're doing that is keeping their hands on the steering wheel and keeping their porn recovery front and center in their life, their attention, and their focus. And by and large, the majority of guys really experience amazing results. They find you guys are going weeks, then months upon months of going, you know what? It's been 6 months, 9 months, a year. And I've really gained some traction, my favorite word, some traction in terms of removing this from my life. And I've got the results, the weight loss, the porn loss that I've looked for. Thank you. Thanks, guys. This has been great. And what happens is they go, okay, I'm looking ahead. Guess what? The road looks completely straight. I think we're good to go. And often, let's put it this way, I will hear back from guys after, 6 months, 9 months, even a year, and I will invariably hear something along the line of, I was good while I was in group, in that focused environment, but being out of that environment, drift has begun to rear its head. And I found myself back in some of the old patterns and old behaviors. I thought I was good to go. I'd lost all of that weight. I had changed all of those porn habits, whatever it was. And now I find myself back where I was before. Now, on a positive side, I'll say this. Guys who've had that experience, they often know this. Okay, obviously I wasn't as good to go as I thought I was. But they will say, I know what worked before. See, the hardest guys to work with are the guys that have never experienced any sustained recovery, and they just have very little idea of what that would look like or feel like. But these guys go, okay, you know what? I need to get back into either a focused program or some kind of maintenance program. And they get back in, and often they go back to achieving the same results. Now, I would love it in my life, and I know you would love it in your life, if you can just take your hands off the steering wheel and have this over and done with, and you never have to deal with it or think of it again. Guys, I'm sorry to tell you, that's Pollyanna thinking. It is just too big a part of your life. Your brain remembers the old patterns. You have a steering alignment problem. All right? You have a drift problem. So, a couple examples in terms of just very specific things. If, let's say, for example, you are looking for, okay, I need to get back into something that is a focused program. Again, that's what I need. I need something which is like a weekly thing to really get myself restabilized and really re-strengthened. Or maybe you've never had that. Then I would really encourage you, you know what? I would really encourage you to email me and say, I would love to look at joining one of the Finding Traction groups where we meet weekly and we're checking in, and I can really get things back on track and really backfill my recovery. I'm not as strong as I thought I was, and I need that kind of sustained, focused help. Again, I'd really encourage you to check out one of our weekly traction groups. Others of you may say, you know what? I hear what you're saying. I don't want this, I've lost my 40 or 50 pounds, but I know that I could quickly put it back on. And I'm not sure I need that degree of a focused group, but I tell you what, I really need some kind of a maintenance system. Just that keeps me coming back to how am I doing? Where am I at? And I would really encourage you, if that is where you're at, and be honest with yourself. Don't think you need maintenance if you're halfway back to gaining half your weight back, porn-wise. If you need focus, you need focus. But if you need something which is just a maintenance thing, I'd encourage you to reach out to me. For example, 2 nights from now, we have our first monthly Finding Traction community meeting. And it's just a monthly get together for guys that listen to Finding Traction. Some of them have been through the groups, others of them are not. And just every month you remind yourself, okay, my car has a drift. This is just bringing me back to true north to say, okay, where am I at in my recovery? And that's why we're doing and starting this Sunday night, the Finding Traction community group. And if you're interested in that, just send me a quick email, put the word community in it in the subject line, again, to bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. And we'll just, get you into a maintenance community group where you get together once a month just to remind yourself, this is a good and pleasing road that I want to continue to walk on. All right, guys, have a great Easter weekend. Good to hear from everybody. And we'll see you on the other side.